What could bread teach us about Jesus? Leave your answer in the comments down below. What could bread teach us about Jesus? Welcome to The Whole Truth, everybody. I'm taking you through the entire Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation without skipping anything, not one verse. We're going to read it all. We're going to talk about it all. And I believe that God's word truly has the answers for our lives. We just got to get into it and read it. And that's why I'm on this mission. I hope you'll come along with me. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button and the share button, and help them to go even further. And let's tell the whole world about Jesus, the Jesus that God's told us about in his word. It's Exodus chapter 16, and it's picking up in verse 15. So Exodus chapter 16, and pick up with me in verse 15 as we're going to talk about manna. If you don't know what manna is, it's bread from heaven. The people of Israel had been delivered from slavery, but they were running out of food in the wilderness. They cried out to God, and God said, I'm going to do something very special for you. And they wake up in the morning, and there's this small, round, fine as frost seed that's all over the ground. And they go and they gather it up, and we're picking up right there in chapter 16 and verse 15. So when the children of Israel saw it, that's that seed stuff I'm telling you about. When they saw it, they said to one another, what is it? That what is it is manna. That's the word in the Hebrew is manna. Okay, so they said, what is it? Manna. For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, this is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's need. 1 omer for each person according to the number of persons. Let every man take for those who are in his tent. Then the children of Israel did so and gathered, some more, some less. Verse 18, if you're lost. And so when they measured it by omers, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And Moses said, let no one leave any of it till morning. Notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses, but some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was angry with them. And so they gathered it every morning, every man according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. All right, so we see there's this stuff. It's called manna. It looks like a seed. It's fine like frost and round. It's all over the ground. They wake up. They say, what is it? Moses said, this is the bread. This is the bread from heaven that God has given to you. In a very real and physical way, Israel had a need. They had this daily need that they needed taken care of. They needed to be fed. And so they needed food. And so they cried out to God, and this is what God has given them. He's given them manna. Now, people have tried to make explanations about this, like where it could have come from. Maybe it's like excrete from insects, or maybe it's something had blown in, or they come up with all these weird ideas. Friends, you're talking over 1 million people in the wilderness, wandering through the wilderness, making their way out of slavery. This is not sustainable. They will have manna for the next 40 years. Over 1 million people eating on this manna for over 40 years. And you're going to try to explain that with a natural cause? Come on. This is a supernatural thing. It was supernaturally put there from the Lord. And he was the one who was sustaining these people. That's why there was enough. Everybody gathered just a perfect amount. How would, even if it was a natural thing, how would Moses have known to tell them to gather up an omer? And by the way, if this was a natural thing, then why did the people have to say, what is it? Wouldn't they have known? I mean, they knew about agriculture. They knew about plants and insects, and they knew about food and gathering food. They knew how to survive in the ancient world. So how come they would have to say, what is it? They didn't know what it was because it was supernatural. This was God given. And what really is happening in the scriptures here is that God is giving us a picture. We've talked about these before. It's called a typology. This is a type of Christ. This pictures Jesus. Now, in the Old Testament, it's a picture. It really happened. It's a real event, but it's showing us something about Jesus. Just in case you think that I'm just like coming off the wall with that, I'm just making that up, take that Bible. Hopefully you've got a Bible and you're reading along with me. Turn it over into the New Testament and look at the book of John. So in the New Testament, you're going to see Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then John. Look at John and the 6th chapter. John chapter 6, and then look at verse 32. John 6, and then verse 32. Then Jesus said to them, most assuredly, I say to you, Moses did not give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. Now, that's not Jesus contradicting Moses saying this is the bread from heaven that the Lord's given you. That's not what Jesus is doing. What he's saying is that you Israelites, you Jewish people, you have all your stock in Moses, and you think that Moses gave you the bread from heaven. But now he says, no, there's a true bread from heaven. In other words, in the Old Testament, Moses, what happened with Moses and this manna was picturing Jesus. Jesus now says, I am that true bread. The Lord gives you the true bread. He's fulfilling the picture that he gave with Moses. So look, read it with me. I'm in verse 33. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. That's going to be important, that he gives life to the world. Then they said to him, Lord, give us this bread always. By the way, this is right after Jesus fed the 5,000 people, right? Jesus just fed thousands of people with a few loaves and fish. And now the people are crying out to him. They're saying, give us this bread. Give it to us always. Always give us this bread. Verse 35, Jesus said, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. They said, give us his bread. And Jesus said, I am the bread. Do you get that? Jesus is the bread of life. Now that's going to help us because I'm asking the question right now, what does bread teach us about Jesus? Well, the first one that I want you to see is that notice that in the Old Testament, in Exodus, God said, gather only as much as you need. And don't let it go overnight. Gather what you need, use what you need, and don't try to hold it for the next day. You know, that's exactly what Jesus does for us. He meets us right where we are. With our very direct and very specific needs, he meets us. That's why so many people meet Jesus and find a relationship with Jesus in so many different ways. Now, there's only one way to heaven, right? That is Jesus and him crucified. And you have to believe in Jesus to receive that salvation. But there are many ways to get there. Some people get there because they're a little child and their mom teaches them. That's how I was. My mom taught me when I was a little boy about Jesus. Some people, they live their whole lives not knowing about Jesus. There's a thief in the Bible who's dying on a cross and recognizes who Jesus is and says, remember me in your kingdom. And Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise. There are people that make it all the way to their deathbed and finally confess Jesus. There are other people that go through some traumatic thing in life, some near-death experience, and then they find Jesus. Listen, there's many things that could lead you to the point of finding Jesus. The point is that you find Jesus. He meets you exactly where you are. As a matter of fact, he calls you exactly where you are. And that's what he does. He gives us what we so desperately need. We think that we need more. I guarantee you that right now, if I was to ask most people what their needs are, Jesus is not the first thing that comes out of their mouth. They're going to say their job. They're going to say housing, car, clothing. They're going to come up with natural things, natural needs. And those are real things. It's a real need. But God was teaching us something here. Jesus gives you exactly what you need. He gives you specifically what you need. And what you actually need is him. Bread of life where you'll never hunger again. You know what Jesus was saying in John? You know what he was saying in that story? He says, you eat this bread, the bread that he had passed out. He said, you eat this bread, you're hungry again. But if you come to Jesus and you take of him and his salvation, you will never hunger again. He gives you exactly what you need. He doesn't give you, what I'm saying to you is this, he's not promising you that he's going to fulfill your life with a car, with house or relationship or whatever. He's not promising you that. He's promising to give you exactly what you actually need, which is eternal life with him. Now, not only that, but notice this. Read with me on verse 22. So I'm back in Exodus chapter 16 and verse 22. And so it was on the sixth day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And then he said to them, this is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all that remains to be kept until morning. And so they laid it up until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Then Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none. And now it happened that some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather, but they found none. And the Lord said to Moses, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, he gives you for the Lord's giving you the Sabbath, therefore he gives you on the sixth day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day. And so the people rested on the seventh day. Okay, so now we see something else. Not only are they not supposed to let it linger until the morning, but then on the sixth day, they're supposed to gather up double. You learn a little bit about the manna. Some people have been confused, like, how's the little seed actually bread? He tells us, he says, boil it if you're going to boil it, bake with it if you're going to bake with it. It's a seed, it's a grain. They would take it, they'd probably grind it up and make it into a flour, and they'd make it into cakes. I'm sure some of them would fry them like pancakes. Other people would bake them and make it into a loaf of bread. Other times it seems like they would even boil it like a dumpling. So it was a usable type of a seed that they would make more with it. It wasn't the exact same type of thing. They could make things with it. And God says, on the sixth day, I want you to gather up double and keep it through the seventh day, because the seventh day is a Sabbath. Well, of course, some of the people didn't listen, and they tried to go out on the Sabbath day, but there was none. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you do that? Why don't you listen to my commandments? I told you, I've given you the Sabbath to rest, and I want you to rest. So make sure the people gather up double on the sixth day of the week. Make sure they gather up double. For them, that would be Friday. Make sure that you gather up double on Friday, and don't go out in the field looking on Saturday, because that's the Sabbath day. That's the seventh day of the week. Don't go that day. It won't be there. Can I tell you the second thing that bread teaches us about Jesus? That Jesus gives us rest. You know, that's what Jesus offers you. He says that if you are burdened, you can trade burdens with him, and his yoke is easy. It is light. So he gives you exactly what you need, and he gives you rest. Rest that comes from him, because I put my faith in him. It's not a work salvation. I'm not working for it. He didn't tell me to go plow the field. He said I could rest. He would provide for me, and I could rest in him. That's what Jesus offers us, is rest in our salvation. I don't have to work for it. I don't have to fight for it. He already fought for me. I don't have to die for it. He already died for me. Do you get that? See, this bread that came from heaven, this manna, taught them about the rest that they get or that they find in Jesus. Now, there's another thing Jesus said too. He said the true bread from heaven, it is actually he who came down from heaven. This manna came from heaven. The psalmist tells us that this is the angel's food. This is bread from heaven. And that's exactly what Jesus is. He is the Son of God, pre-existent, always there. He was there from before creation. He was there during creation. And Jesus came to this earth 2,000 years ago. God came to this earth in flesh, in the person of Jesus. Jesus wasn't created at his birth. He was already existent. Now, it was his advent. He came here, but he was not created. He is already there. He was already existent for eternity past with the Father. And then at what we know as Christmas time, what we're coming up on, Jesus came from heaven and he came to earth, and he did that to die for us. So just like manna was bread from heaven, Jesus is bread from heaven. And then there's one more thing that I want to give you, which is that bread sustains you. That's exactly what bread's supposed to do. You eat the bread, and then your life is sustained. Now, they could not have, from a natural cause, they could not have fed millions of people for all this amount of time, for 40 years. But it was from God. And so God sustained them. Every morning they would wake up. Every morning they would wake up and they would find this bread. Read it with me. I'll show it to you. Look, let's just finish up the chapter here. So I'm in verse 31. So Exodus 16 and 31. And the house of Israel called its name manna. And it was like white coriander seed, and the taste was like a wafer made with honey. Then Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Fill an omer with it, to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread which I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. And Moses said to Aaron, take a pot and put an omer of manna in it, and lay it before the Lord to be kept for your generations, as the Lord commanded Moses. And so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came to inhabit to an inhabited land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is 1/10 of an ephah. Get it? 40 years they had this manna. It sustained them. This supernatural food came from heaven and sustained them. And that's what Jesus does for us. When you're saved in Jesus Christ, you are safe in him. He not only feeds you immediately, he doesn't just take care of your need. He sustains you. He's the one who keeps you. I'm not holding on to my salvation with a desperate grip that the Lord's somehow slipping away from me. Friends, it's the other way around. Jesus has a hold of me. He sustains me. And every time I'm weak, he continually lifts me up. And every time I fall, he picks me back up. And he mounts me up with wings like eagles. Because Jesus is my sustainer. What could bread teach us about Jesus? Bread can teach us a lot. I think there's probably even more answers than that, and I'd love to hear from you. So why don't you tell me in the comments down below, what can bread teach us about Jesus? All right, guys, I've enjoyed today's video. I hope you have as well, and I'll see you tomorrow with Exodus chapter 16. See you then.